Well, good morning. I'm going to try to do a little video on sharpening spindle gouges this morning. This is a typical spindle gouge. This one's a little wider. I have narrower one. The first thing I do is I set my platform. I've got a little piece of 1/4 inch Luan. I draw a little arc on there, and then I cut it out so that only these 2 points right here are actually touching the wheel. So then I can go back, and it allows me to set this platform to exactly the same position every time, even if the wheel is worn down in size. When I get finished, of course, I write on here 35-degree spindle gouge, if that's what it is. Now I'm going to try to show you this from a little farther away, and then I'm going to go up really close and show you what I do. But on this particular gouge, what I do is I want this kind of a curved fingernail area. I don't like these real sharp corners. And so what I'll do is I'll put the gouge on there so that the stone is roughly, the cutting action is roughly parallel to that angle right there. And I touch it on the wheel. Now as I rotate it down, go around and just keep going until this side is now parallel to the wheel. Now you have to be real careful not to tilt it up like this on the tool rest. It's a very easy thing to do. So I'm just barely gently holding the handle, and I'm pushing down on it with my fingers or my thumb, whichever is the handiest, as I work around the grind. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in a little closer and show you how that works. And so again, what I do is I try to find a location on the bevel so it's parallel to that part of the wing. And as I grind it, as I move around, they parallel the cut all the way around. So I finish right there. Now each time I'm rotating the flute. So the flute's pointing up right now. As I get down to here, the flute's pointing out, and I'm rotating the tool so the flute's pointing toward the left. And that usually gives me a pretty good grind on the tool. It takes a little practice to get used to it. Now this is my little Harbor Freight spindle gouge that I really like for doing Christmas ornaments. This one's too short to grind on the tool rest because the shank of the tool hits the tool rest. So what I hold it off the tool rest, and I'm grinding freehand on it. And what you have to do, of course, is I set the heel of the bevel on there, and I lift it up until I can feel the bevel. Then I rotate it around. The flute angle affects how far the wings come back. So what I'm trying to do is finish up again with the stone running parallel to the edge of the cutting edge. And that should give me a pretty good grind. Now this tool is a little bit harder to sharpen. This is a continental gouge that I've ground back, and I grind the wings back pretty far. So on this type of tool, what I do again is I start on the nose, I try to feel the bevel, and I rotate it around, and I'll rotate it a little bit more so the flute's really pointing up on this one. That grinds my wings back further. It's very hard to do in this position. Normally I'm down there very close. Let me zoom back a little bit and show you that. Normally what I do is get over here where I can feel the bevel and I can see the sparks come over the edge, and I rotate my body around. So I'm probably going to block the camera now. Go back to this side, feel the bevel, and bring it back around. And this is kind of a simulated bowl gouge grind. Now another tool that I grind on this that is similar is my spindle roughing gouge. And what I'll do on that one is a little bit different. I keep it straight, and as I rotate it around, I slide that wing back and forth to keep my wings a little straighter. Now if you want to pull the wings back some, you can tilt the tool this way as you finish the grind. But I want my wings to be fairly straight, so all I do is keep the tool straight up and down in this position, and I simply move it back and forth to make sure I've got a good grind on it. And that's how I sharpen my spindle roughing gouge. Now another way I sharpen some of my spindle gouges is I use the same jig that I use for my bowl gouge, and the grind is very similar, but I want this angle to be a lot steeper. So what I do is I take my normal setting for my bowl gouge, which is this one, and I put in a little V-block. And the V-block raises it up so that my angle is going to be sharper here, which is what I prefer for my spindle gouges. And the grind after that is exactly the same as the bowl gouge. Very gentle, doesn't take any pressure, takes off virtually no metal at all. It's a very good way to sharpen this Thompson detail gouge. Now this is my Thompson 1/2-inch spindle gouge, and I like it sharpened slightly different. So what I did is I made a separate block. This one's listed as Thompson 1/2-inch spindle gouge, but the grind is exactly the same. The advantage of doing this is I can grind my bowl gouge and these two spindle gouges without ever moving this V-arm, which means my grinds are much more consistent and much faster. Now I used to sharpen my spindle gouges using the V-arm, and what I would do is I would simply slide the handle up the V-arm as I go around. Pull it back down, slide it up the V-arm. I found that very difficult to control and do it very accurately because it's hard to feel what's happening. But if you watch for the sparks coming over the edge, it's a pretty good grind. It's a good way to do it if you don't have the Wolverine jig. One of the things you have to be careful with is you'll notice here's the center point of my stone. And this is above the center, but it's getting down there kind of close because of the grind I have on this particular gouge. You don't ever want to get it down that low. What happens is it wants to kick the tool down, then tears up your stone, possibly explodes the stone, and could hurt you. You want to make sure you're grinding well above the center line so that there's no chance of kickback down into the stone. I have this little bitty Bonnie Klein spindle gouge that I love for doing real fine detail work. The problem is, even with a fine stone, it's so easy to take off way too much metal. So what I do is I simply wait till the stone slows down. And as it's slowing down, I can just very gently touch it, go over here and grind it just like I would that other tool. But now, as you can tell, it's taking off very little metal. And that's an excellent way to sharpen these little tools without grinding them away to nothing.